Broadcast is starting. Hello, everyone. Welcome to, oh my goodness, we get to start saying it, the Trailer Park Girls. My name is Liza Rogers, and of course, Joan. Say hi, Joan.
Hi.
And you're also seeing a very friendly face from Toronto. This is our wonderful friend and accountant, Dave Puotinen. So
Hi.
for those of you who came to the expo last year, which, oh my gosh, it's actually been a year since the last expo.
Right.
Dave was at the expo. Dave is a former CRA investigator, and Dave knows what he's talking about when it comes to accounting. And he's also invested in the US, so he's helping us with things like investing in the US, setting up the right corporate structure, and all kinds of things. And Dave's going to answer some of those basic questions tonight. So thanks for joining us, Dave. It's how late is it in Toronto?
It's 9:32.
It's 9:30.
Which isn't bad at all. It's tax season, so this is just we're just getting started here.
Not too bad. So for all of those of you who have joined us, if you can see us and hear us, find us and say hello. Tell us where you're visiting us from, and we'll start to get on with the slideshow. If you're watching on an iPhone, if you swipe the iPhone, you should be able to see the slideshow, and it should say something like "Welcome to the Mobile Home Park Summary." There's Stefan, eager beaver. Stefan's always the first one in the question box. Hi, Steph. So Stefan recently went to Mobile Home University and loved it, and he can't wait to get on a webinar. And oh, he's got his sidekick with him. So hi, Sonia. That must be his daughter, Sonia. So cool. So if you're joining us, yeah, that's awesome. Pop a note in the question box, and we'll get started. We'll just give everybody a minute to catch up. And yeah, Dave, how's the weather out there?
It's minus 18 right now.
Oh.
Yes, wow. It's cold. How about there?
Yeah, that's cold. Joan in Michigan, and we were pretty cold. Hey, Joan, it was minus 10, and we wore our snow boots for the entire week that we were there.
but Dave, to answer your question, it's +6 here right now.
+6. I'm going to Orlando on Monday for March break, so that's not quite warm enough for me. I'm looking forward to 25 or 26.
I'll be in Florida on Saturday.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
just for one day only.
Cool. So hi, Maggie. I see you. Hi, Carolyn. Hi, Debbie. So it looks like we've got lots of people coming on board. So we'll get started here. And what we're going to do.
The top box. Do I see the questions, or do you only see it?
You might be able to see them. It's actually in the question box. So the way this works, if you haven't been on a Go-To platform yet, I know a lot of people use Zoom. The chat box is just for the people who are presenting if we need to have a private conversation. And the question box is for everybody who is attending to jump in and say hi and ask questions. So I can see the questions and the asker. Can you see that, Dave?
I cannot. So if there's something that comes up for me, maybe you can just relay it.
You bet. Absolutely. You can't see it either? Okay. All right. Well, that's another thing we'll have a learning curve on. We'll figure that out. So I can see it, and I'll make sure that I monitor those questions from everybody. Okay. So what did Stefan say? Joan, I can't see your something. I don't want to read it because it's from Stephanie. Might be saying something weird. You know, I don't know. We'll get to that one later. So if you can see the Welcome to the Mobile Home Park Summary, what we're going to do is just take a little stroll through this slideshow, and we're just going to go over the highlights. Some of you have already seen a bit of this webinar, so some of it's going to be repeat. But as I mentioned, Joan and I were down there again a couple weeks ago. We had a really good look around. We learned a lot more, so we're going to be able to share a little bit more with you. And then at the end, we'll have some questions and answers, and Dave's going to go through a couple of questions that we'll probably start off with pretty quickly. So here we go. So just need to get my computer to cooperate and go to the next slide. Okay, so there we go. Dave, there's your logo and your information, and it's tax time. So do you want any new clients right now, Dave, or do you want people to wait until after April?
Well, if people need help, we're here to help, certainly.
Awesome. So Dave's been out to Vancouver and Victoria on a regular basis, and he works with a number of our friends, the reinvestors, with Ray Ostrander, and with us too. So he's got all the great people to work with. All of our problems as well. we keep him entertained. So a couple of things that we talked about in the last webinar were there were people who were interested in investing, and there were people who were interested in private lending. And so what we asked Dave to do was very simply lay out what those two options look like. So Dave, option 1 you sent us is investors seeking a set rate interest payment can seek to invest via Canada by extending a loan to a corporation. This in turn holds units in the US limited partnership, and the benefit of this is that the investors' lenders will have no US tax exposure or filing requirements. So this is ideal for those people who want to private lend, they want minimal amounts of paperwork. Do you want to just talk a little bit about this for a sec, Dave?
Sure, it's fairly straightforward. This is think of as a loan that you're making to the corporation. It's generally not going to share in any of the profits of the actual, I guess, the limited partnership and the trailer park itself, but it will, at least in so far as that some people might think that's a bad thing. On the other side of it, you can guarantee how much your return is going to be every year. You can also plan for things like taxation and how much if you're looking to target an income, you know exactly how much you're going to be getting. So on the one hand, you're not going to necessarily enjoy a tremendous increase if the trailer park suddenly takes off more than expected. But at the same time, you know you can count on the amount of money you're going to be getting monthly or quarterly, and I suggest quarterly is a good way to go about it rather than monthly. And one of the benefits of this, as you've noted, there's no US tax filing requirement here, and there's also no US tax exposure. So for people who may be worried about US estate taxes or transfer taxes or the kinds of things that we don't necessarily have in Canada, you're not exposed to that by this option. Okay.
So this is a straightforward, easy option. You know what the interest rate's going to be. There's no exposure to the bad side of the investment if there is one. And we can set up payments however it works for everybody, and quarterly sounds like the best way to go.
Correct.
So that's option number 1. And so option number 2, so for those of you, can everybody see the screen as well? I think I asked that, but just want to make sure. So investors seeking to share in the profit and equity of the property may invest by purchasing units in a US limited partnership, which in turn will hold the property. Investors will have to file a US tax return each year, but this will not result in double taxation if done correctly, as they will be able to avail themselves to the Canada-US tax treaty benefits and claim a foreign tax credit for any taxes paid in the US. So again, also probably pretty straightforward, but this takes people to that next level in that they have to file a tax return and there's more exposure. So Dave, do you want to talk a little bit about this one?
Sure. And really these two options are the difference between, in the first one, in both cases, you're looking at the investment, and because in the first case, you certainly want to know where your money is going towards and whether it's a sound investment, and the trailer park here is certainly, in our view, a sound investment. But you're looking at that investment the way a bank might look at it and say, okay, it's a sound investment. We know we're going to be getting this interest rate. In the second option, you're looking at the investment again, doing your own due diligence, but whether or not it fits into your portfolio. But in this case, you're much more like the, you're undertaking the investment by sharing in the profit and the equity of the actual investment. And when you do this, now you are actually operating in the US, and you may only be a unit holder in the US limited partnership, but now you do have some US tax exposure. Not a bad thing, because we referenced the Canada-US tax treaty there. We don't know what the president's going to do one day to the next, and could he throw it in the garbage? Possibly, but so far it's been respected. and we have no reason to think actually that it won't be. And the U.S. tax treaty essentially means that the two countries have agreed that whoever's investing in the other country is not going to be double taxed on the income that they make, so long as you follow certain steps. And there are some things that you have to make sure of if indeed you are investing in a U.S. limited partnership, namely that you don't use an LLC, for instance, to do it. And generally, it's not a good idea to use your Canadian corporation directly if you have one. But those are all the details that come out when you actually decide to move ahead with the investment. Suffice it to say, this is the option for those who want to enjoy the income the trailer park will be making, as well as the equity bump that you'll get because you're paying down the mortgage and so on and so forth.
Terrific. And just a couple of things while there were a couple of things that came up there, Dave. First of all, there are a few people who have said, why are you investing in the US? You know, and I think for Joan and I, you know, we're not huge fans of President Trump, but the US economy is still the largest economy in the world. I think, what is it, $19 trillion economy? And so some of the states in the US are as big as the economy of Canada. So there's still a lot going on. Michigan, for example, there's still car manufacturing. There's still manufacturing parts for the cars. And so the economy still feels like it's growing. And even if the growth slows down a little bit, what we're looking at with affordable mobile housing, even if the economy slips a little bit, people are still going to need housing. And as people come from that luxury housing down, mobile home parks are going to provide affordable housing. So that's one of the reasons why we're looking at investing in the US and seeing it as still a good opportunity.
Yeah, if I could just quickly add something. We've got close to 1,000 clients across Canada who I'd say 50% of them are looking to the United States. I used to joke when I go out to BC, everybody would say, oh, we got to find something in Ontario. We can't find anything in BC that's going to make money and it's going to cash flow. And I'd say, you know what, I just came from Ontario, where everybody in Ontario is saying we got to go out to BC to find something. So I think collectively everybody has decided, and rightfully, and myself included, that the U.S. Midwest especially, there's a lot of opportunity there where you can actually get some cash, you know, generating investments.
Absolutely, and that's why we love it. So thanks for adding to that as well, Dave, because when your former investigator, CRA accountant is investing in the Midwest, then we kind of feel like, hey, Warren Buffett's doing it, Dave's doing it, Joan and Liza could do it too. Joan, anything you want to say there?
No, I just want to echo the same comments that you've already made. There's just tons of opportunity in the Midwest. And one of the reasons we focused on the Midwest, particularly for the mobile home parks, is that there is just a densificate, like there's a density of mobile home parks in the Midwest. And it's a very accepted, non-stigma form of living. And unlike maybe some of the areas around here, it's not viewed the same way. And it provides a real need. And that's why we're attracted to the Midwest. When we first started looking at the map, we literally said, how many mobile home parks are there in Indiana? How many are there in Michigan? And where are our biggest opportunities? And so far, that's where we've landed.
Yeah, and we love it. We love Michigan. Michigan's a great state. It's friendly and it's clean. Ann Arbor, we loved it. So we'll start to just get into a little bit of the slides here, just so we can show you a little bit about what we looked at. So as I mentioned, Joan and I recently went and spent just about a week, and that's following the trip that we did in November, where we spent 2 weeks driving around and looking at about 35 different parks. So we hadn't actually planned on Michigan in that original trip, but going to Indiana and Illinois, we kept hearing Michigan come up, and then we met a park owner from Michigan, and now everything has snowballed. So making that one really good connection with a mobile home park owner has now led us to having 2 pretty exciting parks under contract. And the exciting thing that's coming up as well is this park owner that we spoke to has a very large portfolio that we're working on buying. So we'll talk a little bit about that too. But this is just a couple of pictures of Lakeview Mobile Home Park, and this is in Houghton Lake, Lake Michigan. It's the largest inland lake in Michigan. When we first went, we thought it might be very rural, but it's not rural at all. This is a really bustling tourist town with year-round employees. There's a Walmart supercenter, there's a large Home Depot, there's a main highway, and there's 4 other townships around. And some of the townships are adding things like manufacturing plants. And everywhere we went, they talked about the housing crisis. Joan, you can probably add to that. Do you want to say anything on there?
Yeah, I think what's kind of really interesting about this park is that we did think it was going to be rural, and it certainly wasn't. Even in their slowest month, there was a lot of people bustling around the town, and you can tell there's a lot of RV sales organizations, boat sales companies there. So there's certainly a lot of money moving through that area for the seasonal market, which is really interesting. And so what that allows us for this park, and I know Liza's going to get into it in a little bit more detail, but we would, right now in its current state, this park is an affordable housing option for many of the people who live there. There are no apartment buildings, there are no rentals to speak of in the entire town. And so people who work there year round or seasonally need a home. And so we really have that market. But because we have also the seasonal tourist market, there's an also interesting spin we could take on a hybrid on this park. And I know Liza's going to get into more details, but it's not just a one market stream. It's an interesting thing. We have about probably 3 different markets we could potentially hook into to expand this park and potentially change it in the future. So I know Liza's going to speak a bit more about that.
Yeah, we'll jump over to the next slide. And this is just, we just put a couple of pictures in here. There's lots more photos. I'm going to provide you with a link to see some more pictures. This is obviously not when Joan and I went in the snowstorm 2 weeks ago. So there's lots of trees. The park's very well manicured. The bank that we spoke to said the owners have done a lot to improve it, and they've really brought up the reputation of the park. And so Joan and I are just looking at taking it to that next level. One of the interesting things about the park, again, this park we have under contract for $575,000, and there's probably $50,000 or $60,000 worth of equipment sitting in the garage. So there's a brand new tractor, there's a new leaf blower, there's all kinds of stuff. And that all comes with the park as well. So this is kind of a bonus. Like we got there and looked in the garage and we're like, oh my goodness, there's a hell of a lot of stuff in here too. So it's got a nice layout. They've done lots of work. Again, there's lots more photos, but there's just a couple here that we wanted to, just a couple of things to remind us of what to tell you about. So as we mentioned, why Lakeview? Joan and I have both touched on that. It's a booming resort town. We went to the RV, what was it called again? Camperland, Joan?
Camping World.
Camping World, and then there's trailer something across.
Travel trailer sales.
And so these 2 large organizations really cater to the RVers and the recreational folks who are looking at summer travel. And year-round travel, and they said that they have their shops there because they just are so busy all the time. So there are a couple of parks there. There's one park that's even owned by the township, and it is a hybrid mobile home park, RV park, and we drove through it. It's beautiful, and so it's easier to do a hybrid park here because the township actually owns one. And they're really, they don't have a stigma and a problem with developing more area in the park. So that's pretty good as well. So I mentioned in here, I just jumped ahead here. I've mentioned in here, there is the opportunity to develop the park. So the park right now, the park is about 11 acres. And there's a lot of the land that hasn't been developed yet. There's currently about 36 spots. There's 30 people living at the park right now. There's 49 spots that we can easily get the park up to. And we found the original plans that show that the park is actually approved for 70 spots. So we could virtually double this park in size, and the approvals are already there. One of the great things about going to Michigan and to the town site was speaking with the Chamber of Commerce, speaking with zoning, speaking with the sewer authority. Who else did we talk to, Joan? Feels like we talked to everybody in the whole town.
We did. We talked to the health department. We talked to the fire department. We talked to the police department. We talked to everybody, including realtors in the area. And of course, we went to Camping World and spoke to them. And we really got a really good cross section of all of the people who would impact this investment or the opportunities for this investment. And everything was so positive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so there's already, the park as it sits is already doing pretty well. It's already cash flowing. There's an immediate opportunity to increase the rent. There's an immediate opportunity to do a chargeback of the water and the sewer. There's a storage shortage because of all of these people who have ski-doos and skis. There's skiing areas close by, boats, so there's opportunity to put some storage. Again, there's that opportunity to build out a whole RV section, and we can bring in some new homes with financing. So we look at this park as it's actually doing well as it is, but with some work, we can turn it around and bring it up to even more. So I'm just going to go to one more slide, and then if anybody's got any questions, we can do some questions. And so there we go. So what's our plan for Lakeview? So what we've got in mind right now, because we have to close on this park on April 1st, April Fool's Day, we're looking at bank and owner financing, money from the Trailer Park Girls. We may look at about $150,000 in loans from friends, just to have that money to be able to put some housing on there right away and have a slush fund in case we wanted to really get on that development track. And we're going to refinance as fast as we can. Joan, do you want to talk a little bit about our meeting with Pamela, the friendly banking lady, and then we can see if anybody's got any questions.
Yeah, you know, one of the concerns we've been warned of is that we could run into problems with financing along the way. For various reasons, and that can be crucial, obviously, if you leave it too late. So we went in to see Pamela, the bank manager at the Chemical Bank in downtown Halton Lake, and we're able to go in and see her immediately. Very small town, so it was really easy to sit down with her, and we kind of just conceptualized our plans with her. I told her what we were looking to do and what we thought was important for the community. And she just embraced it and basically said, I can do this for you. And when we left, her parting words to us was, let's do this. This is going to be really good for our community. So we left feeling like, wow, well, that's pretty good. We just walked in and started talking to her, and we just created that instant relationship. And I think what was important is we said the right things that the community needs, and that's affordable housing for people who live there, and potentially other forms of housing for retirees or vacationers or whatnot. And so it was just super positive, and I feel very confident that we've created this relationship with her, and she's really on our team and wants to make this happen. So that's great.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for that. So if anybody has any questions, while we've got Dave here, and before we jump into Country Villa, we can review what we've talked about. If anybody's got any questions, if there are no questions or comments, we'll jump on to the next park, and it'll be same kind of a quick short presentation, and just to give you a high-level overview, and then we'll finish up with what the next steps are, and what Dave is supporting us with right now, with getting all of our corporate documents all ready to go and getting all of those done. So unless my computer is stuck, it doesn't look like there's any questions. So I'm going to keep going. Sometimes the questions come in slowly and they get stuck a little bit. Oh, here we go. How many investors per park? So Dave, you could answer this one for us, because that's a good accounting question. How many investors per park?
I think that you want to get enough investors that you have enough money, right? That's
Pretty easy, right?
that's pretty. Yeah, it's if you keep getting investors till you have enough money. That's not.
Yeah.
It's not really an accounting question.
So the number of investors isn't so important. It really depends on how many people and how much money they're putting in. And so, for example, if we were looking at $1 million park and we needed $800,000 and our minimum was $50,000, that's Dave will tell us ideally. I think, Dave, what did we say? Ideally, we would look for investors to invest between 50 and 100,000.
Yeah, I think that is what you're looking for. And really for the investors as well, especially if they're going to be investing in the States, there's concerns. You've got to do some US filings, and those are going to cost money, and you may want to do a little bit of tax planning, especially if you're looking to conserve wealth and avoid some of the US pitfalls. So really you want to be, not necessarily 50,000 is a substantial amount of money, certainly. But I'd recommend that really be the minimum you're looking for, just because of all those other reasons.
Sounds good. And so if everybody got that, it's the little bit of tax filing that has to happen, like that actually happens when you're an investor. $50,000 makes it worth the money to pay. What is the tax filing, Dave? Is it about $400?
For a personal tax return in the U.S., about $400 per person.
Not too scary.
No,
okay.
It's not $1 million, but it's more than zero, certainly.
Yeah,
and a lot of people can do their own Canadian taxes, but it's not a good idea to try your own U.S. taxes. Right.
Yeah. No. And then another question here: does the money need to be in American dollars? No, that's an easy one. We'll convert it to American dollars because initially, and Dave, you can probably help me out on this, but our private lenders can just loan us Canadian, and then we take the loan into our U.S. company. But if it's investing, then it's possibly in the U.S. Do you want to clarify that one for us?
Yeah, the option one that you presented originally with the interest-bearing only investment, certainly it will be done in Canadian dollars, and you'll be paid in the Canadian dollars, and there's no worry about the potential exchange fluctuations. If you are investing in the U.S., you're going to be buying a unit in a U.S. partnership. The unit is quantified in U.S. dollars. So what we do a lot of times, Liza and Joan, with clients who are setting up U.S. partnerships is we have them use a singular exchange house and guarantee a rate for all the clients, and that rate can spread over several months, and it's a little bit of a hedge. And that just makes it easy for everybody to understand that, whether you give it today or next week, how much you're going to need to come up with. Having said that, there are currency fluctuations, and those are just out of our control, and certainly yours as well. But you are investing in a unit that's a US dollar in the US partnership, okay? There we go. Perfect.
So Shelley, I can see your question. Can we go? We're going to cover that in the next section. And RSPs from an Olympia Trust account. We're just not set up to do that yet, correct?
I don't think you're set up yet, unless you haven't told me something. But so that's a very so to give you an idea, to underwrite an investment using RSP or any type of retirement funds, TFSA funds, is really a six-figure structuring deal, and that would be far beyond what the kind of deal you're doing here. It would be way too expensive. So you want to stay away from that kind of thing right now, and grow to that, hopefully. But those you're looking usually at five-figure, $10 million deals and above for really to make sense to spend all that money on structuring to get eligible funds or retirement funds.
Because the structure and the paperwork is just so much more with an RSP registered than it is with anything outside.
You're into the securities regulations, right? And when that happens, the securities lawyers all jump in, and it does get very expensive.
And Maggie is asking us about the time frame for buying in. So right now with Country Villa, which we're going to get into soon. In fact, why don't we jump into that now, because we're going to start to look at that next park, because that's the one that we have a little bit more time with, and that's the one where the investors are going to be playing a part rather than with Lakeview, because we've only got 3 weeks. Not a heck of a lot of time for everybody to get their side of the work done that they would need to do. Joan and I, the trailer park girls, by the way, the trailer park girls have a beer tonight because we thought it would probably be good to have a beer. Dave, we should have told you to get a beer.
I have kombucha tea. That's what
cool.
I have.
Oh, there you go. We're drinking
That's a
beer.
West Coast thing, I think, isn't it? This is like West Coast, so there you go.
We're being Midwest with our beer.
There you go. Excellent.
Let's jump into that next one, and then we'll come back and talk about the time frame. So that was Lakeview, and let me just get my little cursor down to my other screen here. I'm having lots of fun with technology this week. Okay, Country Villa Estates in Clinton, Michigan. Joan, do you want to tell everybody a little bit about Country Villa Estates?
Sure. Clinton, Michigan is, and I think Liza's going to talk about this a little bit next, but it's just outside of a town called Saline. And that town is a suburb of Ann Arbor, Michigan. And Ann Arbor, Michigan is where the University of Michigan is, as well as the big University Hospital of Michigan. And Ann Arbor is on fire. It is a university town. It is just hopping. And Saline is considered a bedroom community of Ann Arbor. And Saline is about 20 minutes away from this mobile home park in Clinton. And I ironically had an opportunity through another channel to speak to somebody who grew up in this town and had just returned back for a 10-year high school reunion, and said that his friends were all saying that Clinton is the next kind of emerging market for the urban sprawl from Ann Arbor. And this park is about 30 minutes, I would say, from Ann Arbor. And you know, when we were driving to the park, you're driving through a real rural countryscape. Like, you're going past farms, and it seems like you're out in the middle of nowhere. And we drove back and forth from Ann Arbor numerous times, and like I said, it's about 30-35 minutes. But because you're going past all this farmland, it just felt really rural. But then, you know, we said, you know, if you lived in Maple Ridge and commuted to downtown Vancouver for your job, it'd be farther than 30 minutes. It's just that this drive happens to be beautiful and in farmland and not through cityscape. So kind of put things into perspective for us a little bit. And it is, we feel that this trailer park or this mobile home park is really prime for the urban sprawl to move closer to it. And really at that point, people still need affordable housing. And Ann Arbor is not an affordable housing center, yet it is a huge populace of working and education. It checks all the economic fundamentals.
Absolutely. Cool. And so this little park, it's actually not that little. It's 73 spaces, and the lots are wide. And as you can see from the pictures, most of the mobiles on here are double wides. So this, obviously, when you can put a larger home on, you've got more rent. You can charge. The 2 and 3 bedrooms are really of interest right now. Two and 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. This is what families are looking for. And as Joan was saying, with it being close to Ann Arbor, the university was amazing. The restaurant district was I think they said it's one of the leading hospitals in the US right now. And even in terms of the car companies, there were a couple of, what was that one that I kept forgetting the name of, Phoenicia or something like that, that's in Saline, which is a 10-15 minute drive. And they are making a lot of the car components for the Ford Motor Company. And Ford, I think they were closing down their car plants and shifting everyone over to the SUV plant. And the SUV plant is closer to Clinton. So we've done that research already, because when we heard that the car plant was closing down, we're like, oh, wait a minute, that doesn't match our boxes. So it's actually closer. The SUV plant is closer to this area. So you can see the streets are in good shape. Again, this park is in really, really good shape. The owner has kept it up really well. but he's Italian and his passion is cooking. And he has a restaurant and a burger shack, and he just is getting older and just can't manage his restaurants and a 73 spot mobile home park anymore. So again, here's a little bit, we've talked a little bit about it, but just a review, close to Ann Arbor and Saline, manufacturing nearby, another affordable housing shortage. There's opportunity to develop this park similar to similar to Lakeview. We can do a rental increase. There's rent to owns. We can put new homes with financing on. And that's something that we haven't really talked about too much yet, but with the Clayton Home Program, there's an entire home financing package where they will bring homes to park owners, and as a park owner, you're barely even out of pocket. You've basically got a year to do a rent to own or sell that home, and they do the financing directly to the new owners. So it's a really amazing opportunity to help people who wouldn't be able to afford a stick-built home be able to actually get into a lovely home. I mean, some of these are beautiful. We went in and looked at a couple of new mobile homes and used ones as well, and people are doing a great job with building new ones and investing. Again, there's storage and opportunities there. Joan, anything you want to add to that?
No, just to follow up on the 21st mortgage program, which is the new homes. This park, is so prime for this. There are some vacant spots in it that could be turned very quickly with new homes, just based on the market of people that are there. Very close, there are 2 other mobile home communities that are full, and very nice mobile home communities, and with brand new homes. And so the market, we know the market is there.
Mm-hmm. And that was one of the reasons why we wanted to do the strip. A lot of people that we've talked to who buy mobile home parks from the West Coast, they don't even go and look. And Joan and I felt it was really important to really understand what we were looking at, really understand the market, and talk to the locals about what the market was. Because when you talk to the Chamber of Commerce, you talk to the bankers, you talk to the real estate agents, I mean, they are very open to telling you, what their area needs, what they're short of, and a lot of people forget that the U.S., there's been a housing crisis in the U.S. since the global economic crash, because the U.S. basically stopped building and they haven't been able to keep up to demand. And so there's just as bad of a housing shortage there as there is over here in Victoria and Vancouver, and probably in Toronto as well. So with Country Villa, just get my cursor in the right spot again here. With Country Villa, there we go. So we're looking at bank and owner financing. Oh, did I lose you?
Yeah.
Give me a second here.
Yeah.
Okay, am I back?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. With Country Villa, bank and owner financing, trailer park girl money, and investing with friends. So whereas with Lakeview, we are pretty much ready to go, but if somebody wanted to make a little bit of money and just do a private loan, we're totally open to that. With Country Villa, it's going to be more about that investment structure that Dave was talking about. And so we've got about 6 weeks with Country Villa. We can push it a little bit more if we need to, but obviously we want to keep the momentum going. I'm planning on being down there in May and June to get things rolling. So that is the strategy there. So just a little slide here about what's the overall strategy here. So we want to acquire and start improvement on Lakeview as soon as possible. We want to acquire and start improvement on Country Villa with our investor friends as soon as possible, but we've got a little bit more time on that. And we really want to work on this large portfolio package, and we've probably hinted at this a little bit before. We met a gentleman who was a park owner in Michigan. He was amazing. He had Joan looking at plumbing. He spent the whole day with us. He fed us copious amounts of beef jerky. And he's retiring. He's spending his days as a captain in Florida on a snorkel boat. And he wants to sell his parks, but he's going to be really hesitant to give them up because, in his words, they make a shitload of money. So he's not, quite ready to give them up, but the great thing is that the realtor that we're working with now was referred to us by this park owner. And so our realtor works exclusively with this gentleman, Dave, who has this 4-park package. And so Dave knows that we really want these parks. Glenn knows we really want these parks. And we're in conversation with the two of them to start working on perhaps forming a partnership with Dave and slowly buying out his portfolio. So he's got 4 parks. I think some of them have 130 spaces, some of them have 100, but basically more than 400 spaces. He's got them really well run, really well managed, and there's still opportunity to grow in there because he's still a mom and pop. Like, even though he's got all these parks, he's Joan. How do you describe Dave? I mean, he's hilarious, isn't he?
Yeah, Dave is can you hear me?
Yeah. Dave
is an older gentleman. He's in his 70s, and he's just one of those hardworking blue-collar guys. And I think the advantage that lies in this relationship with Dave is that really Dave is all about relationships, and he took a liking to us, and he knows that we want to create this partnership with him. And the best thing about it is we kind of know his motivation, and we know how difficult it's going to be for him to let go, so we can give him a win-win solution in his transition out. But the fact of the matter is he is in his 70s, and it's going to be time soon where he's going to want to not come back from Florida anymore to work on trailer parks.
Yeah, and he has a new wife, and I'm sure that she doesn't want him working on trailer parks all the time too. So that's kind of the big picture of what we're getting ready for. So here's a little bit of our next steps. So we've got some due diligence to finish. Joan had a really great conversation with the original plumber that did the plumbing at Lakeview, and talked to him about how much Orangeburg was in there, and there's not much at all, so that's good. We've got to complete our financing review, and obviously we'll get Dave Puotinen to help us with that, but we're just getting in the last dribs and drabs of their financing. We've got a great lawyer that we found in Michigan that was again referred to us, and we had breakfast with him, and he bought us breakfast, and he was just a super, super nice man, and said, ladies, I want to help you build your empire, and let me know as soon as we get these ones done when you're ready for more. So he's got an in with a lot of people who are ready to sell parks, and so he also took a liking to us. I mean, come on, what's not to like? We're Joan and Liza. So he's more than willing to help us, and he said he couldn't wait to see us again. So then, the next bit is to make sure we share all of the information with all of you. And find out what your level of interest is. I did send out a letter of intent was that about a week ago? Yeah. And sent that out with Dave's little 1-page letter that he did. And so we really need to know, for those of you who are actually interested, if you can just shoot back that letter and send that to me by email, let me know and I'll send it out. We'll work with Dave to set up the actual strategy. We'll work with our bankers to work out all the loan details. I plan on being in Michigan for May and June. Joan, of course, is going to come down and visit me. And who else is going to come down? I'm sure there's a couple of other people who are going to want to come down and say hi. I know someone's going to pop in the question box there in a second and tell me he's coming down. And we want to grow the empire, and of course, we want to celebrate. So that is pretty much the plan, and we're on plan right now. And so if you have some questions, we can take some questions. And I just want to say a huge thanks, Dave. Thank you for joining us and for kind of helping us validate this and feel like we're not just talking about this dream that we have, but we actually have a real professional accountant who's helping us put this together. And we've been putting lots of work into it, and we're really excited about the opportunity. And we just can't wait to get this first one done. And yeah, we're getting close. So there we go. All right. So there's a couple questions here, and let's see. So what is the offer price? So the offer price on Country Villa is 1.4. The vendor is going to finance some of that. We think he's going to be able to finance around 500,000, but we're going to see if we can get him up to half. And we aren't 100% sure yet if 1.4 is the right price. So as we work through the finances, we'll find out if we need to come down a little bit on that, or if there's enough in it that we can work on the development and bring in those Century 21 home finance programs. But 1.4 is the offer that we have right now on Country Villa, and that's under contract. And Maggie has asked, are there zoning differences for mobile or modular? Joan, that sounds like a Joan question.
Yeah, modular homes can go into a mobile home park, so there's no restrictions there. But most mobile homes cannot go on an empty lot that is zoned for residential. That has to be a modular home.
Okay, so did that answer that question? Cool. Have you looked at possible exit strategies for partners? Yeah, great idea. So we're looking at buy and hold for these, and we're looking at refinancing. So Dave, maybe you can talk a little bit about what a likely exit strategy would be on something like this, so that our partners kind of get an understanding about what's going to be fairly typical with this kind of structure.
Right, yeah, so your limited partnership is going to have a term in it, okay? For those who, I mean, if it's the option one where you're just lending money to the Canadian Corp and getting an interest rate, that's going to have a set term. But for those who are looking to actually participate in the park through the units in the limited partnership, the partnership generally has a term to it, and it generally runs about 5 years, which correlates to what a mortgage might be initially. And then there are some options, and that would be sort of the business decision side for you guys to make. But some of the options that could be put forth, one is that everyone renews and continues on for another limited partnership term of whether it be 3 or 5 or however many years, or the general partners have the opportunity at year 5 to buy out all the limited partnerships at fair market value. Or some hybrid of the two. Some limited partnerships can at that point choose to sell their units or keep them. But suffice to say, and the buyout generally occurs with a refinance, and the hybrid as well with a refinance at year 5, because the idea is that the park's going to be worth more 5 years from now, not only because you guys have put such great work into it and brought up its value, but also because you've paid down the mortgage for 5 years, right? So there's going to be equity in there that you can pull out either to pay out the partners or to distribute some of the funds. But it really is a business decision, and those sorts of options go into the limited partnership, and that will be left to you to decide what to do.
Sounds good. Great. So lots of good options. And
yeah, if I could add one thing, sorry, as well. Generally, you want partners who are looking to stay for the 5-year term. It's problematic. This isn't a stock that you're buying that you're going to trade on the open market. The partnership needs the stability of people who are in it for 5 years. That's not to say if you need to get out, you can't. You know, Liza and Joan could find a way to get your transfer done. But generally, you're looking at a 5-year term, and then you're going to get your money out, which is similar to a lot of investments.
Right. I know my friend Sherry, who's doing her next Langford. That's their exit strategy as well. They're looking at selling or refinancing, and everybody's involved for 5 years. And Shelley is asking, Dave, can you tell us about the pitfalls about investing in the U.S.?
The tax pitfalls, certainly I can tell you about. So the United States has a couple of things that we don't have in Canada, and the first thing that they have is called an estate tax. So if perhaps you're relatively senior, or even if you're beginning to invest in the States and you think that this is going to be a long-term play for you, many years, and eventually even pass these along to somebody, you've got to be wary of the fact that if you are to pass, that there's going to be tax on what you have. In Canada, we don't have that kind of tax. There's tax on the gain of what you have, but not tax on the actual asset itself. So this is why you might want to speak to an accountant before you make an investment, because there are things you can do as a Canadian to make sure you aren't subject to U.S. estate taxes. But that's certainly a pitfall and a concern. The other concern is double taxation, which one of your first slides pointed out can be avoided by using the tax treaty that's in place. But the tax treaty also has certain areas that aren't covered and certain structures that don't work. So again, before you make your investment, and I'm going to avail myself to your investors, certainly for a phone call if they just want to hop on a call and just go over in a high-level way what they're looking to do and what pitfalls might be specific to their situation. I'll do that. Okay. But the tax consequences in the U.S., if done correctly, are zero. The tax consequence is nil, because if it's done correctly, whatever you pay in the U.S., you will get credit for in Canada. Okay, and that's, again, the key word there is correctly.
Correctly. That's great. All right, next question. Do we have any projected financials for return? Yes, we do have some. We talked a little bit about those on the last webinar. Those were kind of our first high level, just got the first round of numbers, have to go back and sort through them. So we're just in that process now. The numbers, I think both of them look like they start off at a 10 cap. And let's see, what else can I tell you right off the bat? Probably best to share that spreadsheet. So what we're trying to do is, for those people who are actually interested, we can share a couple of the spreadsheets. We've done a 10-year worst case scenario projection, where if the park, if we buy the park and we bump up the expenses by $20,000 because we assume that the mom and pop have no idea what they're doing, and we pretty much leave everything the same, the park still cash flows about $10,000 a year. You'll say, oh my God, it only cash flows $10,000 a year. But that's, as I say, that's our worst case scenario, where we buy the park, we don't do a damn thing, and we have a $20,000 expense surprise. Of course, we're planning on putting homes in the park. We're planning on increasing the occupancy. So as I say, I did a worst case scenario, and then we've got a more detailed financial statement that's got some information on there in terms of what we're planning on doing with adding in the homes and increasing the rent. So we'll finish getting the numbers correctly from the owners, and then we'll make those available. And we have a file in the Google Drive that we'll share with you, and it's got the pictures in it, and it's got maps and all kinds of fun things. So there's nothing in there that's not shareable, and we want to be completely transparent. So once we've got those numbers updated, we'll share that folder with you. Cool. Any other questions, comments? It's 7:25, so we've gone almost an hour. Looks like, oh, here we go. Is there an on-site property manager? So Shelley's just asking, at both of the parks, there's an on-site maintenance person, and our realtor who we're working with also owns a couple of parks, and he's in the area. Excuse me, and he has offered to help us get started with park management. He's a really cool man. Joan and I really liked him a lot. Glenn, quite a character, and has had a really interesting life. And he bought one of the owner's other parks from him. So he's really familiar with the owners. He knows them really well. He owns one of the other parks that they've owned. And so, yes, there are on-site maintenance people. We've got lots of support from our maintenance, our realtor, and then also Dave Clarkson, who we were telling you about, who has the 4-park portfolio. He has made himself very available to us as well. So he's in Florida right now, but he said when he's back, he'll be happy for us to do him as a consultant or a park manager, and he'll go and have a look as well. And he's a great guy, and he's got nothing but lots of energy and loves digging around and getting into the parks. So another question? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I think, this is projecting out, but what Liza and I had talked about is that there is maintenance people on site that are very capable of maintaining the parks, but these are not people that we would be entrusting to manage the parks for us.
Mm-hmm.
As part of the development process for both parks, especially bringing in the 21st home buying program, we would need on-site salespeople. And so we talked about the potential of having a part-time employed salesperson / manager that would be filling those roles for us, especially as we fill those vacancies and put homes on the vacant sites to increase the value of the property.
Awesome. Thanks, Joan. Next question from Carolyn. Are the gains projected in the first 5 years in equity only, or are you also planning on paying a dividend after year 1, 2, and 3? So, Dave, I'm sure you would advise us on what's best for that.
Yeah, so the idea, the projects are going to cash flow. With a limited partnership, everything that is made is distributed to the partners. So the projections are that this is going to be a cash flowing investment, which means monies are going to be paid to the partners. As I suggested earlier, a quarterly distribution is ideal. But there's no opportunity for because a partnership in the US is a absolute flow through. There's no opportunity for the partnership to retain anything. It all is all going to flow out to the investors at the end of the year. There may be a business decision to keep a contingency fund. That would be a small amount, generally from cash flow. It might be a little bit of a larger amount at the outset. Maybe if you invest $50,000, maybe $5,000 goes to a contingency fund, say. But in terms of cash flow, you're going to keep the contingency holdbacks to a minimum because you're going to be taxed on the money even if you don't get it. So people generally don't like that idea of paying for something they don't get. So our clients tend to pay out everything.
Perfect. All right. Cool. Okay, so we're just about at an hour. Any last questions before we wrap it up? And Dave, thank you for being here. And thanks for answering all of those questions. And of course, thanks for helping us get set up. We're well on our way for what we have to do for our initial setup here in Canada. And we've got our banker ready and our lawyer ready. And now we're just working through the process. It's really just a process. And one of the things that people think is scary is, not knowing what all of the steps are. And that's why you hire the professionals, because I certainly wouldn't want to be trying to structure what is it, a 3 or 4 part entity that's got Canadian and partners and stuff in the US and stuff in Canada. And so don't try to do this on your own, and don't feel like you have to miss out because you don't know all the answers to all the questions. That's why we've got the experts like Dave, and Joan and I are really keen on finding these great projects and getting to work on them. So it looks like there are no more questions. So thank you everybody for joining us. And if you haven't received that letter of intent and you'd like one, just reach out to me by email and I'll send it out for you. If you have some questions for Dave, let me know and I'll share his information with you. He has very generously offered to answer questions for our potential group. And Joan and I are going to keep working on our due diligence. And I think that about wraps it up. So thanks, everybody. Have a great night. And we'll see you on the next webinar, which, oh my God, I'm actually doing a webinar tomorrow with Sherry. And Sherry's going to WREN members about her new land and what she's been able to accomplish in 5 years. So what Sherry and Rick have done in 5 years is unbelievable. And it's just that getting started. And now they own, I think they're up to, it's going to be 5 buildings that they're going to be either in process or owning, and a pretty significant portfolio. And they started exactly the same way that we're starting. They're in real estate already, so they have that. They had that leg up because they already knew so much more about the industry from having been in it for 25 years. But they've got a really significant portfolio that they really added to in a similar kind of structure to what we're talking about with apartment buildings in Langford. So, Dave, thank you so much. Joan, anything you want to say before we close off for the night?
No, just that, just to echo what Liza said, we're continuing with our due diligence, and it is a whole heck of a lot of work. I have to say, you know, thanks to Liza, she's got more time than I do to dedicate to this, because I'm still working full time.
Binders that we're working on. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're heavy.
Certainly cannot underestimate the amount of work that goes into this process, and I want to reiterate that because I think it's important that you guys know that we are taking this due diligence process probably more seriously than others who are more seasoned and experienced would typically.